From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher. Their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicky Fisher. Our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Skripchuk. And our Batman, the master of tools, gadgets, and all things mechanical, our mild-mannered soon-to-be billionaire, Alan Danvers. Their mission, to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them, and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training Podcast. I'm going to be the host for this episode. My name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
It's me, Vicky.
It is me. Hi, me.
Hi.
Me.
It's me.
Me. We have a guest.
I know.
We do.
We have good guests.
We do. And this is one that people have been asking for. He doesn't realize it. He's famous. Minor internet celebrity famous. So this part of the week first saw him when I was doing my my YouTube stalking of the Grid Life series, and he was on there a couple times. And then I heard a little bit about him on the iRacing side of the world. And then several weeks ago, I think we're up to episode 10, I think is coming out. Maybe. I don't know. He started Lizard Brain Podcast with Tom O'Gorman, former podcast guest, and always welcome back. So then we send out this frantic, we don't know what we're doing. We may be doing something wrong on Facebook trying to set up our Sundae Cup fit. And he responds to that. And I'm like, well, it's time to just do the invitation and see if he'll say yes. And for some reason, he said yes. So with us, we have DJ Alessandrini. Welcome to the podcast, DJ.
Hey, thanks for having me. I can't imagine a better way to spend a Sunday evening. So thank you for having me on the podcast.
It was kind of funny. You're like, we need to do this soon because iRacing series is going to be starting up. And I was like, tonight? And that would have been like 7 minutes from there. And you're like, how about Sunday? I'm like, okay, Sunday works too. So.
Well, I managed to break a stud on my Honda Fit that I promised to some coworkers to autocross. So I knew Saturday night might be turning into a disaster. So I couldn't do it on yesterday night just because I didn't know how far into the weeds I was going to be going trying to get a new stud on this car. Now a Honda Fit, they're press-in hubs, and I don't have a press. And so I just shaved the knuckle. I made some clearance for myself essentially. And I got a lot of messages on Instagram and Facebook saying, that's really sketchy. You shouldn't do that. Well, I don't have a lot of options. So
that's right.
You can jump up and down on it, right? That's about it.
It's there's most of the metal is still there. It's going to be fine, guys.
We had our sister team who has another podcast, Everyone Racers. They did one at the track using the bleachers and a Chevy Suburban, I believe.
So, to press it?
Yeah.
So,
you got to do what you got to do.
Look, I would throw my fiance's car on the trailer and use the trailer as a press.
That could work.
That would totally work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the tongue or the trailer jack on my trailer got caught on the sidewalk at some point. So now it's at a 45-degree angle. So that would make a terrible press. That would not be anything I wanted to do.
No, you might be better off with the bleachers.
Yeah. I feel like everything in my life is in a constant state of perpetual on fire. So this is just a continuation of just how things go.
we had a working theory that earlier this I guess it was late spring, early summer, that the cars were sitting in our garage talking to each other saying, okay, how do we make this really horrible on them? And let's all do this at the same time. So it was fantastic.
That's how it works. Yeah. Nothing ever, if anything breaks, it's followed by a ton of breakages all at the same time.
Yep. We had an M3 E46 M3. We just started it out from winter storage, and just driving it home, the fuel injector on one of the cylinders got stuck in the open position. Engine gone. Bye.
Later.
Yeah,
It had one job. one job. Just inject fuel and stop every now and then. No.
Mhm.
I keep getting a check engine light on the Fit, and it says it's lean on one of the cylinders. So I should probably look at the injectors at some point. But when I clear it, it doesn't come back for a couple months and it's good to go, but it eventually comes back.
It's probably just losing weight.
Good Lord.
It's a daily driver. It should be fine.
It should be fine. How bad? How hard can it be? They're supposed to be bulletproof. That's why we have one.
Well, I mean, look, I don't believe any car's bulletproof for a second. I feel like anybody who says a car's bulletproof just they ignore the failures. I think that's the only way that's possible, because every car breaks. There's literally not a car that doesn't break.
We've yet to meet one we can't break, but that's, I think, more a reflection on us than the cars. But that's a different story.
Yeah, we do it often.
We
We just went through a whole series when like all of our cars started going at once, like within a week apart. They all start having problems. I'm like,
You're like running out of jack stands.
Pretty much. Pretty much. It's like,
right.
which three do we want in the garage to fix right now? Because the other ones are going to have to wait.
That's right. That's right.
I remember before last year. So last year, my race car got crashed and broken. But right before that weekend, I was telling my SO, I was telling her, so we'll be able to have the garage this year because I'll be able to move the race car in and out. Well, that was before it hit a wall. So now it's just like essentially in the garage, hogging up the garage. And I feel like my comment of like, we'll be able to move the race car in and out, like totally jinxed it.
Yeah, don't say anything.
Why
Don't say anything.
Why would you put a car where the race car should be? I don't understand this stuff.
Just, like change brakes and make it where I can actually be productive during the winter. But that never happens. I end up just iRacing a whole bunch during the winter.
Mm-hmm. So, sir, just in case people aren't familiar, and I do horrible intros, could you kind of give our listeners a little bit of an introduction for yourself? Could be professional, racing, family, whatever, just so they could get familiar.
Yeah. So my name's DJ Alessandrini. I started driving anything in a competitive nature in 2014. I went to a couple autocrosses and I didn't really take it serious. And eventually my job was kind of getting in the way. I was traveling a lot for work. I was in hotels like 300 nights out of the year. Basically, I lived in hotels. And I would just go to an autocross if I happened to be home and there happened to be an autocross event like 15 minutes from my house. So like very few autocrosses from 2014 to 2015. In 2016, I got a different job just because I was like, I kind of want to do this autocross thing more. Also, I want a wife. And also this is really hard on my significant other. So I started autocrossing more and I went to my first national event, which was the Toledo Pro Solo. And then I would say that's kind of where I got hooked into a car being used for competition. I've always been really competitive in anything. I started off competing, traveling the country, competing in Halo 3. I competed a little bit in Halo 2, but mostly Halo 3. And then once like that kind of died, then I did Halo Reach for a while. And then I did Super Smash Brothers and then Counter-Strike for a little bit and then Overwatch and, and then eventually started competing in cars. So I already had a lot of competition background and cars was just the best way to light money on fire. And I just loved lighting money on fire. It was literally the best. So I started, I got the bug at the Toledo Pro Solo in 2016, went, oh my God, look how good everyone is at this. I got like dead last, but I was hooked because I saw how good everyone was. And I saw like the recognition that they got and the respect that they were given for being good at this thing. And I came from the esports world where if you're good at something, people just talk a bunch of shit to you. That's kind of like the normal thing. I was like, whoa, this is weird. People are nice to the people that are good at this. That's kind of crazy. So I already knew that I liked driving, but I wasn't sure if I enjoyed the competition of it. And that event solidified it for me. So from that event forward, which was kind of like probably like June or July, I tried to find an autocross every single weekend for the rest of the year. And then when winter came around, I thought, man, winter is going to be a big waste of time as I'm trying to get good at this driving thing. I should find something to do during the winter to keep competing and keep like getting better, because I felt like I was getting better like every weekend. Also at some point in 2016, my SO brought me to electric go-karts, and it was just like a rental go-karting place. So I started doing the league there. So I was competing in that, and I was just competing in everything that I possibly could. And so when the winter came around, I was like, okay, I can't just do go-karts. I'll literally go broke. At this point, I probably spent like $2,500 in rental carts. And I started sim racing just to stay fresh and practice for autocross. And so 2016 was, and in 2017, I had a wheel clamped to my desk and pedals bolted to a piece of wood that like would slide around under my desk. So then I put little hooks in it so like it would dig into the carpet. And I was like, oh yeah, we're really legit now. So it was a wheel clamped to my desk. I had a 27-inch computer monitor in front of the wheel, and that's how I drove in that particular sim, which was Assetto Corsa, if any sim racing fans out there. And basically I just competed in at first it was just chasing other autocrossers lap times. And then I was like, man, I bet the racing would be fun. I should do some races instead of just like laps. So I started competing in a league there, and I got crushed the first race and was like, wow, people are really good at this. So then there was like a 2-week break before the next race. And I was like, I really want to do well at this. So I probably put in those 2 weeks, I probably put in 90 hours of practice on one track in one car, and then went and won my second ever sim race in a league. And then just figured out, oh, I just have to practice a bunch. So that whole winter was me just like lizard braining the crap out of practice. I would try to do hundreds of laps before every league race, while everyone else might do like 20 or 30. And then once they saw that I was doing 300 laps, maybe they did like 50 or 60, but I was still doing like 300, 400 laps of practice before each race. And I did that for like the whole winter season. And just because the sheer willpower and neglect of everything else in my life, I ended up getting pretty good at sim racing. And then when I got back to the autocross season in 2017, everything was just so much easier when it came to competing in the car. So at that point, I became a huge believer in sim racing as a tool to really work on the driving thing. The thing I felt the most was that my bandwidth was expanded so much, where purely the driving of the car and handling of the car and the car being at the limit of adhesion wasn't a thing that I had to think about. All my mental bandwidth could go toward the course and analyzing, oh, how did I interpret this part of the course incorrectly? How could I change my approach into this section to get a better exit? Oh, I prioritized, like I was troubleshooting my run rather than being purely focused on just the driving of the car. So the driving of the car became very second nature, and I attributed that to sim racing basically.
So what cars do you prefer in sim racing?
Whatever gives me the best racing at this point. If it's just for lap times, I like to drive cars that are so challenging that it feels like it's pushing the boundary of my comfort level.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a car that it doesn't feel like I can get the most out of it within a couple laps, then I want to drive that car, because it's forcing me to do better. It's forcing me to learn new things and push the boundaries of my current abilities, which in return makes me feel like the time I'm spending doing that is worth it, because I'm improving in the thing that I'm trying to get better at.
So have you?
We're doing simulators.
Oh my gosh!
Back away.
We literally have a sim racer like right behind me, and it
looks like a cookie car behind you.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to learn, but probably need more practice. Have you tried the 3D one? Have you?
So I did VR for a long time, Sorry,
How
Bill.
was that
Bill,
for you?
You can't not get me to not talk about sim racing. Look,
It's coming up. I'm
Look,
just trying to
on
get
the-
her away. I
on
know
the
I can't
I'm
control you.
sorry. I'm sorry. We're going to skip over. We're just going to
No, we're
go
not.
right here.
No.
on the Lizard Brains podcast, I would talk about sim racing all the
Oh my
time,
God.
but then it would just be me talking about it, and Tom would get bored and he would leave. Okay.
No.
So-
No. Well, the thing is organizing my schedule mentally and then hopping back on because there's 2 leagues that we can be part of. I'm not good. Like I'm not good at this. And
It's fine.
yeah,
Everyone has to start sucking somewhere.
yeah, especially
could
when
call
you do
us
the
Uber
figure
then.
eight. It's so hard to control the cars, like really hard to control the cars.
Well, there might be something into that with your settings. Like I said, like I feel like competition always drives me to figure out anything really. So it's not like I was just beating my head against the wall. If I felt like there was a problem with something involving, oh man, this is harder than it needs to be, I'd watch 2 hours of YouTube videos explaining every single setting in the sim that I was using. So then
Mhm.
I would be, oh, maybe this would help with this problem I'm having with feeling the car. And I would like mess with the setting or whatever. At this point, I could probably drive a halfway decent lap without force feedback, just because my eyes are so in tune to the yaw on the screen. It would be
Mhm.
really tough, but I could probably put a lap together that's like within like 2 or 3 seconds of like my normal lap time without any feedback at all, because over time you gain this sim muscle where your eyes detect the yaw before your hands, and in a real car before your ass ever would. So that's a gained muscle, a gained skill. Like your brain needs to develop those pathways and that muscle memory of the yaw changes on the screen. My hands open up the wheel to control the car, right? Because most of the time you're probably spinning and flying into dirt, right?
Yeah. What do you mean by y'all?
The yaw.
It's when you're from the South and you talk funny.
Yeah, right. I'm just thinking y'all.
Y'all come back.
Yeah, like the direction of the vehicle is different than the direction it's traveling.
Right.
The
Okay.
slip
So, like-
angle is what you usually
Yes.
think of it.
So
Vicky.
like as the rear's coming around, the yaw of the car has changed, right? And
Okay.
some yaw is good, but obviously it gets to a certain point where now it's not slip angle, you're just sliding, right? So
Yeah.
being able to recognize that as it's happening, you would naturally open up your hands to let the front wheels follow the front tires follow the rear tires, because the rear tires are moving across the surface, and you open up your hands to allow the front tires to follow those rear tires instead of the rear tires just going, and now you're spinning.
So how accurate do you go ahead, Bill?
It's fine.
ahead.
I've given up.
No, it's fine. It's
We
fine.
had 2 questions and we were going to get here, but no. we're
Okay,
here.
go ahead.
We're here.
Go
All
ahead.
right, hold on. Turn on the elevator music. We're taking a reprieve.
We're gonna go
Reprieve
off.
from the sim talk.
Okay.
Reprieve
Nope.
from sim talk. Bill, let's hear the 2 questions. I'm ready.
Well,
Go
they're her favorite questions, which is why I can't see why she's doing this, but that's okay.
No, it's fine. We're just
It's good.
you know.
We'll do sim now. We'll come back later. We'll do them later.
Okay.
No,
It's
I'm
fine.
ready. I'm ready now.
No,
I'm not
it's
even-
fine.
I'm not even going to talk about sim racing.
No, you are.
Yeah,
No,
I mean, you
well,
can't
that's
stop
why
me.
you're here. That's why you're here. It's sim race season coming up. So
It is. So
yeah.
with the transition from a lot of the parts of the country that we're located in, it's starting to become transitioning towards the end of the season, or some people the seasons are already over. So we were thinking, we try and cross train as much as we can. And one of the things that we did a year or 2 ago in the right before the plague, we bought a sim, and we've basically looked at iRacing as a way for us to get, cheap in quotes, seat time to practice. But with that, there's the how do you do that, and then how do you transition it back out into the real world? So that was really what the most of the conversation we were going to have related to sim racing is. So I guess transitioning from the real world into the sim is different than transitioning from the sim into the real world. So let's.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who have purely only driven in real life, and then they hop over the sim. They have a tough time. It's
That's me.
It's
That's me.
much easier to go from the sim into the real world, and that's just because the skills developed in sim racing are just easier carry. You get bonus information when you go to the real world, in the sim, there's a lack of information. Like when I go sit in a real car after sim racing a bunch, all the physical aspects of driving a car is all bonus information. I could drive that car without any ass getting feels like extra, right? So now the transition from real life into the sim, you have to be patient and give yourself the time to develop that sim muscle. I would pick one car, one track, and I would try to set some lap times on that track. And then if that starts getting frustrating, then jump to a different car, maybe on the same track, and drive that around. And you'll eventually gain like a repertoire of like, okay, these cars drive like this, these cars drive like that. The other thing that I stress for real world racers coming into the sim is the equipment. If you're just sim racing, or if you have to recognize what you're trying to get out of sim racing. If you're trying to just have fun during the winter and blow off some steam with some friends on the internet, then you don't really need that great of equipment. You just need a controller that is a wheel, which is like a Logitech or a Thrustmaster, like those pedals, mostly the pedals, because the pedals of like the cheaper wheels do not translate into a real car because they're potentiometer based pedals, which works fine for the throttle, but on the brake, no brake actually works with how far you pressed it. And that's how a potentiometer works. If you want the braking to translate from the real world into the sim, you almost have to start with a load cell pedal. And that a load cell pedal uses the same sensor that scale that you would stand on in your bathroom uses, but it uses that signal and sends it to your computer as an analog sensor signal. So, well, it actually doesn't send it to the computer as analog. I know somebody's going to complain about that. It's an analog signal that gets sent as a digital signal to your computers. But basically, it's judging the pressure that you're putting on the pedal as pressure being put into the braking system of that sim racing car that you're driving, which is much more applicable to the real world, because when you're driving your real car, you're putting pressure into the brake system. So it feels and acts very similar. And I find a lot of people get hung up on a potentiometer pedal because it doesn't feel anything like what a real car would feel like. The wheel doesn't matter as much, but it helps. If it's on a flimsy surface, then it's numbing any of the information that you would be getting into your hands, because that's one of the most important, besides your visual information, into your hands is the most information. So a lot of people, they won't rig up the wheel properly, so it has a lot of play in it, or they have a wheel that just has a lot of play in it. It's just like a cheap plastic wheel. You can be plenty fast on cheap equipment. There's plenty of people who set better lap times than me on equipment far cheaper than what I'm using, but they've acclimated to it. They have went past that learning curve and they've gotten used to those things. If you're going from a real car, you want your equipment to feel as much like a car as possible. So the learning curve that you're experiencing is just the simulator, not the inputs into the simulator. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
You lost her a potentiometer, but that's okay. I can get it. It's the
Stop.
one. It's the one we have.
Excuse me.
No,
Yeah.
Vicky, what's a potentiometer? I think you got it.
I'm just.
Oh no, Bill was right. So a potentiometer is it's measuring the distance traveled on the pedal that you're pushing.
Okay.
It's not measuring pressure into the pedal like a load cell pedal would. Well, hey, look, if I lost you, Vicky, that means I lost like half the audience. So I'm glad Bill said something.
Yeah, we do have a proper sim racer. When we can get it to work properly. And that usually has something to do with the seat vibrator, that
the butt kicker,
the butt kicker,
yeah.
The butt rumbler.
And once you stop trying to do the virtual reality. The virtual reality was hard.
It's some people you need to acclimate to it, and then other people, like my fiance, can just throw the thing on and she's just like, oh, what's going on? And she'll look all around. She doesn't get nauseous at all. The first week I used it, I could only use it for maybe half hour at a time.
Yeah.
And then the moment you start getting woozy, you're supposed to take it off and go do something else. And then when you're
Right.
not feeling woozy at all, you can come back and try again. So I would only use it for a half hour at a time, but I would try like 6 times throughout the day. And then by the end of the week, I could do like a whole practice session with it. And I might feel a little uncomfortable afterwards, but I didn't get woozy. And then probably like a month in, I could do barrel rolls and like it wouldn't matter. And just
Oh
like,
my God.
like it's just like I was immune to feeling that like feeling where you get kicked in the stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah, because eventually my brain because your brain goes, you're moving, but it doesn't feel like you're moving. So you're probably poisoned, and then it makes you sick. Eventually your brain goes, actually, we've been fine for this whole month. We'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, we had it up here for a New Year's party.
Oh, that was horrible.
Oh, with my sister, because she's a racer also, and we'll figure, we're gonna do this. We're gonna take some not Benadryl. We're gonna take some Dramamine, and we're just gonna go ahead and do this.
Yeah, you can't tough it out.
No, I tell you
were
what,
out cold an hour.
No, we just fell asleep at that point because the Dramamine just knocked us out, and we never got to the racing part.
That's not where that story was going, or at least
No,
I think that's where it was going.
That's kind of like most of our laps. Sorry, that's just how it goes.
You're gonna do great, and then you fell asleep.
Yeah, we were all psyched and ready to go, and then the Dramamine just knocked us out.
I feel like at some point in my life, because I plan on racing until somebody takes my keys away, at some point I'm gonna have a nap past a race, and I'm gonna be like, oh no, this is the moment I'm old, is when I sleep past a race I was supposed to do. Like I'll be in my RV sleeping, and then I'll hear like the green flag go.
Yeah, I bet you have nightmares, don't you? Is that your nightmare?
What, getting old?
No, no, sleeping past your race.
I mean, I haven't even gotten close to it yet. I have dozed off a little bit sitting on grid, but I don't know what it is, but a race car that's rumbling is literally the most comfortable thing ever. If I'm ever having trouble sleeping, I should just go sit in the garage with all the doors shut and just let it run.
Oh, get rocked.
I would definitely fall asleep there.
Get rocked to sleep. Just
Disclaimer.
like a baby, like a little baby.
Disclaimer, don't do that. You'll die.
Have the garage door open, please.
Or somebody will kill you.
No, just the carbon monoxide's a real thing.
So the transitioning from the real world to the sim racer, the thing that I was having trouble with, and I think Vicky was having trouble with, is it seems like at least in iRacing, they wanted you to start with the MX-5 Cup car, kind of to qualify and earn your points and get out of rookie status. And I swear that whatever tires they have, they're made of ice. The car does not. We have one, and it doesn't drive anything like that car.
So I've driven those cars, and I think they're pretty accurate. So I think at some point, for example, last year there was a big esports season for like Grid Life iRacers, and they were using TCR cars. And I've never driven a TCR car, but I have plenty of experience of driving race cars that are front wheel drive on racetracks. And I thought those cars didn't feel anything like a front wheel drive car feels. But the better I got at that car, and the more I was figuring out its nuances, the more I realized, oh, wait, actually, this kind of does drive like a front wheel drive car. Unfortunately, because I still didn't like driving them in iRacing, which means I just don't like front wheel drive. So it's unfortunate. That's what my race car is. But
I was going to say that doesn't work out too well with your garage.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, I didn't get to pick my free race car. I was just blessed with one. So
yeah, I understand. So I guess what you're saying is there's a transition period and a sensitivity difference, maybe.
Yes, and over repetition and just allowing yourself just the patience of, I'm going to suck at this until I don't.
Much like every video game,
or just much like anything. If you start anything new, you're gonna suck at it until you don't. The important thing is that you give yourself patience and allow yourself to suck at it. It's fine if you're not good at the thing that you just started doing. Then nobody expects you to be good at something right off the bat. But the important thing is that you just be patient with yourself and just keep going. Because if you put enough critical thinking into anything and you put enough time and effort into it, eventually you're at least going to be competent. like maybe you won't be good, but like at least it will be a good learning tool. I've always said iRacing makes a terrible video game. So if anybody's out there trying to use it as a video game, you're going to have a bad time. But what iRacing does is it's a really, really good and powerful tool. So if you're using it as a tool, it's going to be beneficial to you. If you're using it just to have some fun, it's not going to be that entertaining to you. I would suggest like another sim, like Assetto Corsa, the original, not Competizione. And that would be a much better, I'm just going to get some laps in this car, so it feels like I'm driving something simulator. But iRacing is a much more intense and less forgiving sim than anything else out there, essentially.
So for the racers or potential racers at home who want to get better or start to race, you would recommend iRacing then?
If you want to, because when you're driving at 98% pace in iRacing, it drives like a car. That last 2%, you're starting to game some things.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you're gaming some of the weird oddities that exist in the sim for that last second of the lap time, the racing is still the same. The finding the lap time and being clever and experimenting and like playing with the boundaries of the track and like just making little adjustments throughout the race as the track changes and as your car changes, all of that is spot on. The racing that you have against other cars and the flow and the way that the cars interact with each other is spot on.
Okay. So we suck, Vic.
We do suck.
You
know what?
It's fine to suck at things.
And you know what? Part of it is
why we have in training in our title.
Right. Part of it is a little bit of being techno Amish at the same time, because there's a little bit of a
setup,
setting it up and understanding how the program itself works is takes a little bit of practice at the same time. Also, like, for instance, people pop on with these really incredible liveries and they create very, very cool liveries. I don't really know exactly how they do that. They just kind of put something in and they just kind of go. So do you have any information on that?
It's a program called Trading Paints,
mm-hmm.
and they're making their liveries in Photoshop or GIMP. I think that's the free version of Photoshop.
Yeah, GIMP is the free one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am very not artistic. My stick figures look like they were drawn by a 3-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So I have other people make liveries for me. That's how.
There you go.
But they make the liveries in Photoshop or GIMP.
Right. See, he's techno Amish too.
In some way.
No, just art Amish.
Just
I don't know if do we want to do
art Amish.
We really want to use the like, I'm sure Amish are really good at things. I don't know if I want to use that as like a
well, technically they're not going to be the greatest.
Yeah, they wouldn't be the greatest at computers, so maybe that works in that end. But they might be great artists, so I don't know if I want to use that in that, in that context.
Yeah.
Look,
It's not global.
Amish,
it's just technical.
Yeah, if you find an Amish person that's good at a computer, they're not very Amish.
No. Probably not great race car drivers either, but
hey, you never know.
That single horsepower car they have. So if you were to say, for somebody who's looking to get into this, that maybe is a racer or wants to race, what kind of systems and priorities of the equipment would you think would be prudent to start with?
I would do an 80/20 Allumastrut rig.
Okay.
I think the best deal if you live in the States right now is from Rig Metal. So rigmetal.com, just Google it, you'll find it. I think they have the best rig per dollar currently. There's nothing fancy on it. It's just a stable platform to mount all your stuff. Now, as for the stuff, you'll want load cell pedals. There's a couple different options. You can do like Thrustmaster makes some load cell pedals. Fanatec has their CSL line of load cells. Those seem to be fine. The sweet spot, it's like right in between those pedals that are just fine and the pedals that are like $1,200 is probably the Fanatec V3 Club Sport pedals. Those are probably the pedals that are the best bang for buck. you'll probably end up around $350, $400 for those. If you can find them used, that's cool. They sell all those extra parts if you need anything. If not, if something's broken, like a load cell, or like you need some more polymer bushings or something to get like the brake to feel exactly how you want, you can buy all that stuff separate. You just reach out to Fanatec and they'll send it to you. But the Fanatec V3 is probably the best sweet spot for somebody who drives a real car. Those pedals for $400 feel like a car's pedals for the most part. If you want it to actually feel like a car's pedals, you probably have to spend upwards of like $1,200 on some Titan pedals that, like, they're literally pedals that you could put in a race car, but they have like sim sensors and stuff hooked up to them, or like Husenfeld pedals, or, you know, like the way fancier ones. But you don't need to spend that much money for it to get the most benefit out of those set of pedals feeling like a car. I feel like the Fanatec V3 is probably like the sweet spot. And when it comes to the wheel, kind of depends on what you're driving. If you're driving Indy cars, you probably need something that's a direct drive, because you need a wheel that would give you that much power. If you're driving a power steering, whatever, if you're driving a Miata NC or ND, there's like no steering feel in that car. So you really don't need a fancy wheel to replicate what you would feel in that car. The most important thing though is to have the wheel firmly mounted so it doesn't wiggle around as you're using it. It needs to be firm and stationary. So you could get away with just a used like Thrustmaster TX or T300, and that would be completely sufficient for your wheel to use as training into a real car. The most important thing really is the pedals, because at the end of the day, when you're driving a car at the limit, the wheel is kind of just a suggestion on where it goes anyways. You're mostly driving the car with the pedals anyways.
So what are the feeling on the shifter? Because some of the setups have a spot for a shifter. Some say that it's really not worth it. Some people have them. Some people love them. Thoughts?
Yeah, for me, having the shifter on the rig, honestly, just made me much better at heel towing, and gave me just a lot of repetition on the proper form. Your hand should have a specific shape on the shift knob for every gear. And the reason why you do that is then you can never accidentally put it in the wrong gear. So right. If your hand is cupped in the direction of second gear, then you're only ever going to get second gear. If your hand is just literally just pushing the shift knob straight up, then it's only ever going to go into third gear unless you have like weak retentioning springs. I've done that before. I pulled the shifter straight back and went into second gear before, because I was in a high G corner with a car with a bunch of Aero and Hoosiers. So like I didn't realize I would have to counteract G loads to like actually put the car in the right gear. But besides that scenario, you get a lot of repetition on exactly when to shift or how, like, that hand placement on the knob, because you're doing it quick. Then you're heel towing, and everyone could always be better at that. So at this point, it like heel toe is so natural because I've had tens of thousands of reps with it. It's like, it's not anything that I would even ever think about. And that's because of all the reps on the sim rig. So I think a shifter in that terms is important if the car that you're driving and trying to get better at has a shifter. It doesn't make sense to try to make this thing as a practice tool to go drive your real car and then leave out something that you're doing like 3 to 4 times every single time you get to a straightaway. And then, you know, all your downshifts before you get into the corner, you'll need to do those things. Now, that being said, a lot of the cars in iRacing don't really use the shifter that much. And it's a big shame. The Miata, the ND Miata, they have a Global MX5 Cup car in iRacing that used to be an H pattern. But when the series figured out that we can't keep transmissions in these cars, we're going to force everyone to buy $18,000 Sadev sequential transmission. Then iRacing updated the car and put a Sadev sequential transmission in the car, so it matched the real world cars. That was, I wept for that car, because now the car is just so boring to drive. But there are still cars in iRacing that have H patterns that you could use to practice with. So you don't need an expensive shifter. I have this like Thrustmaster THA8 or whatever it's called. Just look up Thrustmaster shifter. This thing's been through the ringer for like
Really?
4 years, and it works exactly the same as when I bought it. So it doesn't die, and it's like $100.
Okay.
So for $100 with all the skills I've gained playing with this shift knob, it's
Mhm.
pretty good.
And
Okay.
you didn't have to buy too many clutches either.
No, 0 clutches were bought in the making of these heel toes.
That's right. That could be the way you finally heel toe, Miss Vicky.
That's right.
No, it's a learned skill. When I first started trying to figure out how to heel toe, I would do it just like sitting at my desk, because it's an awkward angle for the foot to move. So
Yeah.
over time, your hip will get used to that movement. It will feel less stiff as you try to move your foot in that direction. And so the movement, you won't find your own body fighting that movement. So just do it without like just doing reps just by yourself, sitting on the couch. You can like twist your foot in that like direction. And then when your hip gets tired, just stop, because you don't want to hurt yourself practicing heel toeing sitting on the couch. That'd be the dumbest way to ever hurt yourself. But
I have to explain that
Excuse
one
me,
out.
Mr. Doctor.
Yeah, you're like-
I was sitting on my sofa, and
somebody's like, "Why are you limping?" "Oh, I was practicing heel toe while watching Game of Thrones."
that's right.
But yeah, it's like anything, just like repetition and reps is gonna help you be better at the thing. And I know when I first started being like, I should really be able to hit the brake and the throttle at the same time. That seems like a useful thing that I should be able to do. My hip felt like it didn't want to move my leg in that direction, but I just kept like going through that uncomfortableness until the point where it's like, oh, cool, I can do this. And when you can do it on the street, you can definitely do it on a racetrack, because on the street's much harder, because you're not flying into a corner on the ABS, most likely.
Hopefully.
On the street.
Yeah. Not often, at least. Okay, so assuming we have the hardware, the computer and the screen. Do you care about single screen, triple screen, VR?
So a single screen's a little limited, because there's a lot of tracks where you actually have to turn your head to see where the car's going to be. So bare minimal, you should have an ultra wide, which is basically like two 16:9 screens like
Wide.
connected to each other. Yeah. So it's a 32:9 ratio screen. And that's what I currently use, is an ultra wide. I was having reliability issues with the VR headset, but I think that's mostly due to my computer. I think something's wrong with my computer. Like it's like a motherboard issue or a RAM issue. Every once in a while, the sim will hiccup. It will freeze for like a second, and then it'll come back and everything's fine. But when it would do that in VR, the VR would kick out and then the game would crash. So, and that was like a me issue. And I was sick of dealing with that. It was making me lose a sim racing season. So I saw this like really expensive Samsung G9, like it's like a $1,400 monitor new. I saw it for $600 on Facebook Marketplace and was like, well, there's my solution. And I went and picked it up, and then was like, crap, now I need a thing to mount it to, and then spent $200 on a monitor stand, and it was like, oh crap, I need to get this other thing. And then the next thing you know, I'm like, crap, I spent $1,000 on this stupid thing. But it's in terms of like comfort, like if I'm ever doing like a long endurance race, I really prefer the screen. But in terms of immersion, I never feel like I'm sitting in a car more than when I'm wearing a VR headset. It actually feels like you're sitting in a car. And when you're placing the car at that specific angle on the inside of that corner, and the car pops up on the inside curbing, it feels like you just drove that car to the inside curbing and it popped up on the inside curbing. It's very immersive. It really feels like you're placing the car at the limit of adhesion. It really feels like you're driving the car in VR. On a screen, it doesn't feel like it's so much. But at this point, sim racing to me is just a really nice way for me to compete and to keep like those competitive, like the razors sharp, basically. If you stop competing, then if you jump into a competition, you have like a lot of nerves. You're not used to dealing with like the pressure, stuff like that. But if you're like constantly competing, then those situations aren't as stressful, because it's just, this is just like a Tuesday for me. It's not like a big deal.
You just
So-
beat your nerves into submission.
Yes,
So
with repetition.
Segueing off of that, have you ever experienced, okay, say for instance, you're not on the track all winter. This is the first time I ever experienced this. It was the weirdest feeling. And then going into the car for the first trip out in the early spring, my sensory was not up to that drive. I had
Yes.
to, yeah. Do you think that iRacing helps with that?
I think it kind of hurts it, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because, well, I think the amount of iRacing, because at that last 2%, those like weird oddities you do for that last little bit of pace,
Mm-hmm.
I think for most people, it will be an improvement. But when I'm trying to compete at a high level, I'm exploiting everything that I possibly can. And sometimes you drive cars not how they're driven. And every time I hop into a car, in like for the first time, especially on track, it always feels a little weird. It feels fast. It feels like
Right.
it feels like the vision of my eyes is narrowed and the outside of my vision is blurry. And my eyes tend to sink low on the hood. So when I jump into a car after winter, I remind myself that the eyes are going to be the limiting factor here.
Mm-hmm.
And I force myself to see as wide as possible. And that normally helps with that feeling of, man, I haven't driven anything for real in a while. Also, some rental carts right before you go jump in a car really help because you're sliding around on tires underneath you. You're getting that sensation of grip and G load on like your neck, and like
Right.
you're still, and you're like, and you're moving the steering wheel and like reacting to the limit of adhesion underneath you. I think that like a 1-2 punch of that in sim racing, you could probably jump into a car and be relatively fresh. And then reminding yourself that it's a natural reaction of the body to narrow the vision when it feels like you're in danger. You're not in danger. You've done this before. You're 100% okay. Everything's fine. Just widen out the vision, and it will feel like you never stopped from the last year.
Right.
So those are the things I remind myself when I get back into the car for the first time after not driving for a while. Like, for instance, when I raced at Lime Rock, what was it, like 3 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
That was my first time racing since Road America last year. And I had 3 laps of practice before the green flag got thrown in a car that I wasn't familiar with. And those reminders that I have for myself were really crucial for just having a nice, successful race. The other thing, if you've listened to my podcast, I had a conversation about this. I used the simulator to practice being comfortable, being uncomfortable, because when you're at a race weekend, it never feels like you have enough time to be like 100% comfortable when that green flag's dropping.
Right.
So you can't purely just use the sim in a capacity where like, I'm ready for this race because I practiced for 20 hours before this race that's an hour long. That's not how it works in the real world.
No.
You're never 100% comfortable. So I'll make it a point to jump into iRacing official races with only a couple laps of practice, knowing that I'm going to be a little off pace and a little uncomfortable compared to everyone who's like grinded out like 10, 15 hours of practice. But that's fine. I'm not there to win the race, though sometimes I do, but I'm not there to win the race. I'm there to practice bringing out my best self in that moment, not being 100% comfortable with everything that's going on. And when I took the green flag race 1 at Lime Rock, because my only practice in the car was like the 3 laps during quality, and it was a shit show, and there's broken cars everywhere and there's yellow flags everywhere. And I was like, there's no point in me burning up these tires when I can't even set a lap. And I just pulled in. I was uncomfortable, but I had a lot of practice being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I figured out weaknesses of mine that were able to be critically thought through in situations like that. And I figured those things out using sim racing. I realized, when I'm uncomfortable, I tend to underdrive the first corner. And that sometimes gets me in trouble because it's way easier to see everything in front of you than behind you. So now if everything behind you starts becoming in front of you, you're not entirely sure where your place is in everything. So, I tend to underdrive the first corner. When I'm uncomfortable, then I'm just going to do a little bit more, right? Oh, okay, cool. All right. I figured that little thing out. I also tend to not experiment enough throughout the lap. Maybe I can't do that in the first like 2 or 3 laps because there's tons of cars around me. But after that, maybe I can experiment around a little bit, find some more pace, go chase down the people in front of me, right? Like little things like that, just figure it out in the sim, translate directly into the real world.
So I guess for everybody who's getting used to this, I think, if you're old enough to remember, their sim used to have a slot in the front, used to throw quarters in. It was quite fun. Most of the sims now, not so many quarters, although I could probably make some money if we put one of those in and I was able to collect quarters on us. But so what type of different softwares would you consider that would be suitable for someone trying to race in real world and maybe practice or improve?
If your aim is to become a better race car driver or a better racer or a better competitor, then it's really hard to beat iRacing.
Okay. At least we're doing something right, Vicky.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
So is there, it looks like there's about a bajillion settings and a bajillion things you can set up. And then there seems to be this hidden art of setting up the car. Is there kind of a general-ish guideline for that? Or is that something people make too much of a big deal about? Or
the setup of the car is like the last second. So if you're still 4 or 5 seconds off pace, then it's not the setup. The wheel settings and the settings of the sim and making sure your FOV and horizon shift and all that, making sure all that is correct is really important for it to feel like you're driving a car. If your FOV is all messed up, then it just feels like you're driving a thing on a screen. But if your FOV, which is to any person that hasn't sim raced, it's basically like how your place is in the car. So if your FOV is too big, it looks like you're driving through a GoPro lens. If your FOV is too small, then it kind of looks like you're driving it through like a telescope, basically. So you want to get your FOV correct, where when you're looking at the screen looks like a portal into the sim world. And the more screen that you have and the closer the screen is to you, the bigger that portal will be, the more that you can see. But the FOV and the horizon shift, which adjusts basically on iRacing, the horizon shift is like aimed naturally down. And that's so noobs can see their dashboard and when they should hit the shift lights. But really it should be probably around like -8 to like -11. And it really depends also where your screen is mounted. If it's mounted kind of high, then like everything's going to be messed up. You want the screen to be like your windshield. You wouldn't have your windshield like pointed in like 6-7 inches where you're looking up into it, because you don't look up into your windshield in real life. So that's going to take away from it feeling like a car. You want it to feel like you're looking into that portal that I've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So all that stuff's really important for it feeling like a car.
Yeah, because we noticed when we first got in, I think we were well, since we already had a Game of Thrones reference, we'll do a Hobbit reference. We were hobbits driving in this car because we could barely see over the steering wheel. We're looking through the steering wheel and the dash. It was really horrible. So then we found that setting, but there seems like there's thousands of them. So I guess we'll focus on those for now, and maybe we'll get a little bit better.
Yeah, and I can help you guys. I've probably set up over 100 people on Grid Life iRacers. If you're not part of that Facebook page, then you should absolutely be part of that Facebook page. Over 100 people I've helped get their sim rig set up and have their settings and at least give them a ballpark. I'd say a vast majority of people don't have their sim rig set up correctly, and they're fighting an uphill battle from the get-go. And when I do sim coaching, the first thing I always do is we just go over their settings. And not to take away from my coaching at all, because I do feel like I give really helpful driving advice and really do a good job of finding that low-hanging fruit. But a lot of the benefits they have from doing coaching with me is me literally just looking at their settings and making sure that it's good. They'll send me a picture of the rig. So I'll know like what wheel they have, what pedals they have. There's specific settings that you should have if you do have potentiometers, pedals that in iRacing where it makes it feel more realistic. There's different settings that you should have if you have a load cell. There's different settings that you should have with depending on what wheels you have. And then, like I said, that FOV setting is really important. VR, it's easy. You just put the thing on, you get used to the gut punch of your brain being confused. The FOV is always perfect in VR. That's like probably the biggest selling point. Anybody that's getting new into sim racing, I say, give VR a chance. I explain how to get over the nauseum. Is that a word?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that.
No worries. Race car
uh,
drivers, we don't know why the English numbers are hard enough.
Yeah. Because the FOV is like such a hard thing to explain to somebody. You really just have to like, you really have to help them set it up. And then once it's how it should be, then they'll be able to understand, oh, this is how it should be. And then they'll jump into a different car and the FOV will mess up because for some reason in iRacing, your FOV, you have to change it between like all the cars because why would it make sense in all like, oh, I set my FOV and now like I have the correct FOV and all the cars are driving. That's not how it works. Like I said, it's a terrible game, great tool. It's not going to do your normal quality of life video game things that other games do.
That could be our problem because we set it for the one car and we just keep switching cars.
Yeah, I'll so with my screen, that's a 49-inch ultra wide monitor and it's 21.5 inches away from my eyeballs and it has a 1000R curvature. My FOV goes from 96 to 99 depending on the car, and the horizon shift goes anywhere from -8 to -11. And I'll have to mess with the driver height to make it feel like I'm sitting in a car as well. And every single car is different.
Do they save it after you fix it, or is it different when you get back in it again?
When you hop into a different car, it'll be your settings from the last car.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't save per car. Then.
I've already put in a ticket to iRacing saying like, why is it like this? It should be per car.
Per car. Okay. I'm with you. I vote that too.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
No
Signed the
worries.
petition.
I'm with you.
It's on change.org.
Change.org. I'm in. I will donate my $1 or whatever it takes. Okay. So last thing knowing you, it's not the last thing we talk about for sim racing, but let's just pretend this was the last question we had arranged for sim racing. So practice habits, would you rather get 1 day a week for 2 hours, or would you rather get 15 minutes every day, or somewhere in between?
You should split it up because after the first half hour, 45 minutes, especially when you first start out, that long extended focus, it's diminishing returns. The best practice you're going to get is that first 15, 20 minutes. And then doing it every day for that period of time, you keep the rust off. So instead of the first half hour knocking off the rust from not doing it for a week, you immediately jump back into gains. And that's really important to building those sim racing muscles that I talked about earlier, is that continual repetition. So even if you get home from work and you're exhausted and you have a headache and you just want to lay down, sit at the sim rig, 10 minutes elapsed, just to keep the rust off. That's what I would do. I'd have like a grueling, like 17-hour workday and get home at like 3 a.m. and I'm like, I should do at least a couple laps. And I'd sit down and I would convince myself, I'm just going to do 5 laps. And I would sit down and end up doing laps for 20 minutes. And then I would go to bed, but it would keep the rust off. I would be able to immediately, when I wanted to start working on something, I would be immediately able to jump into actively working on that thing, not knocking any of that rust.
You know what, Miss Vicky?
Yes, sir.
I don't think we did any of these things right when we did.
We did not. We didn't. We just kind of jumped in, and then it was a spun out disaster.
So if you're a disaster like we are, DJ, and we were looking for somebody to help us potentially improve, would you know of somebody who might be able to help us with this sim racing thing?
Yeah, I mean, I do sim racing coaching. So does Tom O'Gorman. So just reach out to any of us. I'm probably better with the settings. Tom's really clever with using different car track combinations to try to pull out some weaknesses to work on. I definitely do the same thing. So it's really me and Tom, we talk about driving and racing in different ways. So you kind of have to just pick whoever you feel like you resonate better with in terms of that driver coaching. Not everyone's going to like chocolate ice cream. Some people are vanilla fans. And I feel like that it's the kind of the same thing with driver coaching, but there's plenty of sim coaches out there. And honestly, just getting another look at your driving is super helpful. It could be a friend, because I guarantee even if you two are setting similar lap times, just some honest conversation and some critical thinking about each other's shortcomings, you're both going to come out a better driver at the end after that.
No.
The critical thinking was the important part there, Bill.
Oh, well, she's the only student I've ever had on track who I told her what we needed to do on the next lap as a drill, and she's like, no. I'm like, okay, there's
something to dig in there. Hold on. There's something to dig into SOs not listening to each other, because I've watched somebody trying to explain how to do something to their SO. And then they'll ask me for advice, and I'll literally say the same thing, just like word it slightly different. And then they'll go out and like try it. And before they like would it. So I don't know what that is.
Yep,
I politely just told him to stop talking.
That works too.
It was just too much for me. But yeah,
it's fine. We've come to I can instruct her in not this. So so we've got this Lizard Brain podcast with you and Tom O. So what are you guys doing on the podcast? I mean, I've listened to them all, so I'm kind of pretending to be the audience here. But what are you guys talking about? What are you guys discussing? Or is it stories from the track? Is it how to get better? Is it everything above?
I think Tom and I, we just kind of want to share and talk about our experiences. And I mean, we were having these conversations anyway, so we thought we should just record them. And it's also an avenue to build relationships with people that we normally wouldn't be able to build them with, just because when we're at the racetrack, we're at the limit of our bandwidth. We're just so busy just running around doing things. And it's impossible to have these conversations with everyone. And through our emails that we get at the end of each episode, we're able to engage with people we normally wouldn't have time with or don't have the ability to engage with because we're not at the same events as them. So the podcast really is just, it's a way for Tom and I to hang out. And then we'll come up with topics that a lot of times Tom will come up with a topic and I won't really have that much to say or think about that topic. But then as we start talking about it, I kind of get light bulbs going off in my head. And when I first started trying to figure out this driving thing, I would listen to a bunch of podcasts. And if I listened to an hour and a half of podcasts and had one golden nugget to take away from it, I thought that was an hour and a half worth spending. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times through these conversations that Tom and I have, I come away with golden nuggets of my own, just like organically and as it's happening on the podcast. And also sometimes even just trying to explain my thought processes or how I approach something, it solidifies it into my own head, where it feels like I'm teaching myself that in some weird way, where because I had to put it into words and it used to just live in my brain as thoughts, it now is more solidly wired into my brain. It's easier to pull out at a moment's notice. Also, we kind of like goofing. So we have fun and I sometimes set Tom up for failure. I'll like throw a segue to him where there's no possible way he can come out of it clean. And I laugh at him as he's trying. He hasn't caught on yet. Sometimes I'll be like, so Tom, why should anybody listen to you talk about driving your life? And then he just, and he doesn't know what to do about it because it's just like such a dumb question that like, how was he supposed to answer that and come out clean? So sometimes I try to sabotage Tom for my own entertainment. Yeah, I don't know. We're having a good time with the podcast, so we're going to keep doing it. And yeah, it's a nice way to interact with people that normally we don't get to interact with as much as we would like.
For sure. Race weekends are busy weekends.
Yes.
Oh, the crazy weekends.
I guess the podcast is called Lizard Brain Podcast. What were you guys trying to?
It's actually called Lizard Brains because Lizard Brain was taken. Yeah.
What were what were you calling it?
He called it Lizard Brain, but it's Lizard Brains because there's multiple brains on the podcast.
Okay.
That's true. There are two, at least, and sometimes guests.
At least two. I haven't had to do a solo podcast yet. I have one lined up if I need to, but I haven't had to yet.
I would always keep one that's evergreen in the holster because life happens, man. Just
we do, but it's already outdated because we talked about how awesome it would be to have Eric Coutil on the podcast, and then we actually got him on the podcast. So
Eric is a record holder for our podcast. The man is just way too busy.
Yeah. He's sitting in third on ours right now, so he hasn't taken the top step yet. Apparently his viewers don't want to hear from him.
Oh no, I meant he's a record breaker because we keep trying to get him on, but he's always like,
oh, gotcha.
It's just like, and then once he got into the accident last year, I was like, I'm just gonna leave him alone for a while. He's got a lot to do now. So
yeah, he was busy, a
little busy.
So are you an instructor just on sim racing, or do you instruct on real track also?
I would prefer as coaching. Instruction is mostly like a curriculum based. Coaching is more like, the difference to me is you're finding what their low hanging fruit is, and then you're coming up with ways to practice that out or figure that thing out. Or, it might even be like, hey, when you're driving on the street, concentrating, having your thumbs on the 9 and 3 spokes because your hands get a little sloppy on track. Like, let's focus on that driving around the street. So next time you come to the racetrack, it will be a little bit more focused, and your hands staying at 9 and 3 won't feel so foreign to you. Right. That's literally some feedback that I was giving somebody that I was driving with earlier today. So, I do coach in iRacing and in real life. I feel like in iRacing, you have much more tools and you can do it from your home office, which is pretty cool. But I do coach in real life as well. Mostly I do it for rides and things. So if I'm driving with somebody, I'm also coaching them. That's mostly how I get paid with seat time.
That's a good deal. I like that deal.
Yeah, because all I want to do is race cars, and mine's currently broken. So it's nice when you get to drive other people's things.
I would say.
So I always like to know what people tell themselves when they're on the track or when they're racing or whatever. Do you have something like a self motto that you instruct, that you pass on, or that you teach and pass on?
Go fast and take chances.
Oh,
all right, Miss Frizzle.
Just kidding.
That does sound like Miss Frizzle.
Vicky's face changed. She's like, that's terrible advice. No, I don't know. I don't have, things that I'll tell myself is expand your vision. Like, I'll just be like, come on, good eyes. I'll say that, like, especially like before an autocross run. Cause there's like that first run is so important. Cause you normally autocross format, you only get 3 runs. So I'll remind myself, like right before I launch the car, I'll literally say out loud, good eyes. And then like launch the car. Maybe that could be a motto, but I don't really, I'm just trying to do my best at any given moment. Whatever my best is that day, I'm just trying to bring it out, basically.
So where do you see any of your stuff going? Do you want to spend more time on track, or do you want to kind of continue with the sim racing?
Ideally the racing would start paying for itself. I never expect to get like any actual money from racing, but in an ideal world, I would build up enough relationships and basically rapport in the community where sponsors and other various people can help me race as much as I want, because I'm already spending every penny that I ever make on it. And so either I need to make more money or get more help. But basically, I just want to go race and compete. That's all I want to do. And I feel lucky that I found the thing that I want to do. A lot of people, they'll wake up and go to work and come home and watch TV and go to bed and wake up. And it's like, that's that's what they do. They haven't found the thing. And I feel really, really lucky that I found the thing. And it's the only thing that I want to do.
Right.
All the time. Anytime in between racing is me just waiting to go racing.
Right.
So, I feel really lucky that I found something that I'm like this passionate about, because it makes life really exciting.
It does.
But it's exciting when you're racing. Unfortunately, the problem is when you race, everything else is literally the most boring thing that you've ever experienced. Like, what short story, I was talked into going to Cedar Point like 2 years ago, and I didn't really want to go. I thought it was a big waste of money, but I was kind of guilt tripped into going. So I ended up going, and I have never been so bored in my life. Roller coasters at some point were probably exciting, but when you're taking green flags and going 4 wide, everything else in life is the most boring thing ever. So you just want to keep doing that thing.
And you have to wait in line.
Yeah. Also,
it's a big long grid.
Look, a roller coaster is like a poorly driven race car, and you have to wait in line to go do it. Like, roller coasters are terrible with the friction circle. Whoever's driving that thing sucks.
And they don't get any better either. They're just like the same.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, consistency, I guess, but like, honestly, come on.
No trail braking, nothing. I mean,
yeah, the weight just goes side to side and down and up, and it's never moving around the outside of the vehicle. It's like, somebody teach this roller coaster what a friction circle is.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. Well, usually we would do our Fast and Furious, but since we're going to have you on again at some point,
yes,
we're going to save them for you, so you don't have to be subjected to our Fast and Furious storytime questions, which are disasters.
Okay.
But it's quite fun. For people who want to follow you with your podcast, we've got the Lizard Brains podcast, normal podcast places.
Everywhere except Amazon. Amazon keeps turning it down. I think we're too spicy, or there's somebody hitting the wrong button on their side.
I don't know.
But I don't know how many people get their podcasts from Amazon. Look, if you're getting your podcast from Amazon, there's better options.
There's definitely more. There's lots of options.
There's lots of options.
Right. And if they want to follow along with you and see how you're doing and see what you're up to,
you can follow me on Instagram, Alessandrini Racing. Just search up. I'm sure my name will be in the description. You can literally just search my name. I'll show up probably as one of the first options on Google, and my Instagram will be in there somewhere.
And if people want to join us and seeing if we can get some instruction on sim racing, the best way to contact you would be?
Yeah, DJ at lizardbrain.life. So it's just one S, or not. It's actually no S's. Lizardbrain.life. So DJ at lizardbrain.life. That would probably be the best way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. That was great. Thank you for coming on, sir. Say hi to Tom for us. We haven't seen him in a while.
Of course.
And thank you for coming on the podcast. And we will talk with you another time. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Captain's Log Supplemental.
So, Miss Vicky.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember when we were watching those WRL events and some of those grid life events where you used to see the in-car video and it had like the cameras seeing front and back, but it also could see all the telemetry and everything that was going on?
Mm-hmm.
You know, most of the ones that we liked were taken by the Sentinel system. Remember James came on our podcast earlier?
Right.
You know, we have no excuse since he lent us one for trial and demonstration purposes. We should actually probably put that in one of our cars. Maybe two.
I really think we should.
I think we should.
I know.
Because then we'd look like the immature endurance racing team that we are. Oh, wait, I mispronounced that, didn't I? Sorry, my bad. We could
so what does the
have,
Sentinel system do?
we could have 3 cameras with picture in picture. We could have, if we ever get the AIM system to work, open invitation to anybody from AIM to come on and give us a little bit of love. We need some help. And then we could have all our telemetry on there. And then we can have it streamed live into the paddock or around the world to our millions of fans. We're apparently very popular in Kenya right now. Don't know why, but that's fine. And it can integrate all the available race statistics from like Race Hero and everything. So we could actually see how we're doing on video. We wouldn't even have to carry around our phone anymore. Live.
I love it.
Do you have any?
That was a good one.
It was.
That was a really good one.
I know.
Oh,
if
thanks,
you would
guys.
have just waited, we would have got to the sim
No,
stuff. But hey,
That's fine. It was good we mixed it up.
I feel like all we talked about was sim racing, which I'm fine with.
Well, that was the whole point, because we're entering sim racing. So it was good to,
off season.
yeah.
And we will probably be contacting you for the sim racing stuff. We just have to get our sim back up and functioning, and then you can tweak it. Right now it's dusty.
Yeah.
It's really important to do that repetition thing. Honestly, like the way I got as good as I did at sim racing was from just doing it every day. It like turned into a habit.
Right.
It's just and if I knew I was having like a busy night, I would just like wake up a little early and like hop on the sim rig and just do some
Right.
laps. The laps, it's not like you had to have an epiphany every time you did laps, because if it's like I only have 15 minutes and you just hop on and just like do some laps and then get off and go do your thing. Now at least when you jump on to try to like actively work on some bad habits and gain pace, you're not fighting through some rust. You're just like
Right.
like driving the car is normal. You're hitting your marks. Everything's fine. Now you can actively work on the thing that you're trying to work on.
I think we just really need to understand how the program really works and make sure that our system's running, because we've always had a hard time with our seat rumbler. And yeah, we've always it's always been a hit and miss. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But then I realized that maybe there's like we're dialing it up too hard or too high, and sometimes that shuts itself off. I don't know, but we're working out we need to work out some tweaks on it.
It could be you guys hook it up to a sound card, right? Yeah, it could be the sound card's just like is running out of power. I mean, off the motherboard, I think it can only get like 70 watts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this one's got a dedicated sound card for it. I'm not sure we're doing it quite right, because I think it's got a threshold. It's too high.
Is it externally powered?
It's
like, does it
in
go
the
into
case
an
of the box.
amplifier?
No.
Then you might just be overloading the sound card, because 70 watts isn't a lot when it comes to like
That much bass.
Yeah, that much bass. I mean, it's essentially like a subwoofer. Like my computer speakers are like 300 watt, which is like nothing when it comes to sound.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
True.
So if you're only getting 70 watts out of the sound card and you're trying to have that power your sound, your butt kicker, and it's probably not enough, you might have to throw it into like an external amp and then have the amp send it to the sound kicker.
Oh, see, now we're gonna have lots of talks about this setup, because I think that's the problem is that it's been frustrating, because even trying, like everybody that we have, they hop on Discord, but I'm not able to get to Discord. So I'm always,
Why not?
well, I don't know. Because
She's techno-Amish and she
it's
doesn't hold her
because
microphone by her
technically I'm
mouth.
trying to make everything connect, and
Hey, you got a microphone
on
on the table? There it is.
and I
yeah.
just don't know how it connects properly. So trying to get it all squared away, and it's like I kind of got this janky headset that goes through my phone now, because I can't seem to get it through the system properly, and it's just a hot mess.
We'll
It's
figure it out.
frustrating. It's very frustrating. So I think we just really need to play with it and ask questions.
Not
I
the
want
tools.
I want to learn to focus on the driving and not focus on the system.
Yeah.
Because the system keeps,
I mean,
making you frustrated.
the butt kicker might also not be functioning correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard great things about the butt kicker, but I've never had one. It always
Yeah.
seemed really expensive for like what it was. What are they, like $200?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd rather have one tire.
I figured it was a feedback that I'm used to, so I was hoping it would be helpful. It's been
I hear
distracting.
I hear that it's awesome when it's functioning properly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never had it. So you don't need it if it's detracting from the goal, which is to get better at this racing stuff.
I think it'd be really good for you to get a little bit more track time. Definitely work on your heel toe, because neither one of us do it. And racecraft is always something we can work on.
Yeah,
I agree.
The way the cars move, the way that like spaces disappear and the way that spaces appear, dead on in iRacing.
I like it. I think we could do that. It's going to be coming, garage season, so we might as well just start with the sim. get it
Mhm.
running properly.
Yep.
I think we're doing something wrong with either the settings or the setup of the rig itself. In that, like I said, when we do the Global MX-5 Cup car, it is like ice. I'm not sure if it's just we're not sensitive enough to it yet, but it just
You might have there's two different things. You might have the feedback on the wheel too low, so
Mhm.
you don't feel that it's tugging your hands to open the wheel,
right.
Yeah.
or it could be so high that it's clipping, and basically clipping means that
Yeah.
that the wheel is trying to give you extra information, but the wheel's maxed out with like the amount it can turn to the right. So
Mhm.
what it's trying to like yank you more to the right to give you some kind of information on what the car's doing.
Mhm.
But because the thing is maxed out, you
It's
don't
not.
feel that extra information. It just feels the same. And now all of a sudden the car's out of control and you're like, what happened? Why did it spin? I didn't even feel that happening.
Yeah, like it's like nothing gone.
Mhm.
It's like, okay.
Right. So it's
I guess I'm in the wall.
either too little feedback or too much feedback for what your equipment is.
Okay.
That's most of the time what I find in there.
Hello.
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 Oh shoot. Should I turn on a video?
No, you don't have to.
You
Oh,
can.
okay.
We just
I
do
mean,
it so we make hand gestures at each other as who's going next. So it's not a big deal.
Okay. Hold on. Let me see if I can get it working.
We did get Tom very good when he came on, though.
Hold on. Is it working?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. We greeted Tom with blue sunglasses when he came on. It was
Gotcha.
Kind of funny.
I don't have anything so iconic, unfortunately.
That's okay. Nobody does. We're
No.
quite boring.
If only $3 sunglasses from a gift shop could be my iconic memorable thing, but I'm not that marketing savvy as Tom is.
Hey,
Wow.
well, thank you so much for helping me out with the
Yeah.
strut situation.
Did it end up working? I mean,
well,
it looked like it wasn't going to.
You know what? I think there just wasn't enough clearance, and I know that Ben, I think it was Ben, was talking about, well, he had to sand down a little bit of the beading, and I'm like, well, I could go in on the other side and just weld on the other side of it just to sure it up, but I got really nervous about it. So anyway, we called and talked to him about it. He's like, he didn't know about the GD and the GE versions of the cars. So when he was sending out the struts, people were making the modifications for them, but he says he wasn't aware. So now he's making those changes going forward. I guess people just assumed that that's what they were doing. So
I think it's the same kit for both GD and GE. And on mine, it was 0 issue.
Right. Well, I know that the extension to the eyelet on mine has to be longer than the one that's there. So he's going to take them back, and literally he's probably about a half hour from where Bill works. So he's local.
He's less than 2 miles from where I work.
Yeah.
That works really well then.
Yeah. So we're going to drop them off, and he's going to make some modifications to them.
So the way we sync it up on my podcast is we all do like a 3, 2, 1, and then we clap. And then you look for the spikes, and then you line up everyone's claps, and then everyone's synced.
See, Vic, this is what you do when you've done a podcast 9 times well, as opposed to 375 times not well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, honestly, the Teams audio or Zoom or whatever we're using right now is honestly pretty good.
It's not bad.
Yeah, normally we record in Discord because it has a noise filter called Crisp, and we were using that. And the particular server that we're on, I spend extra money so the audio quality is good, but it didn't give me any control over anyone's like specific microphones, because a lot of times you can like I watched a lot of YouTube videos on it. You can take somebody's levels and normalize them so their mic sounds more like everyone else's
separately. Yeah. In Zoom, you can do that as well.
Oh, can you?
So we get a single track if you just want to take the cheap, easy way, or you can get everybody's separate individual tracks.
Oh, that's pretty legit. All right. That makes sense to me. That sounds awesome.
It's a setting I found one time.
Gotcha. You got lucky.
Once I found it, then everybody's like, "Oh, how do you do that?" I'm like, "Oh, let me go see it." I can't find it.
Is it like is this something you need to pay for or
No.
No?
Well,
Shit.
I mean, we pay for Zoom, but nothing extra. Did you go to NJMP?
Mm-mm.
Okay,
I
so
did not.
you did not cook yourself like we did.
No, I heard it was very grueling.
It was so
Oh, it was really hard.
actually
think
the picture Vicky has behind her is from NJMP.
Yeah.
I mean,
It
I know the track's fun from autocross
Yeah.
or from
yeah.
iRacing.
It was hard to get through.
It was so hot. Everybody's sitting there going, "Oh, we're going to Grid Life finally," because you guys are mostly Midwest and we're East Coast, and we go there and we're expecting this like rock'em sock'em party atmosphere all night, and everybody was just shot. It was dead.
It was tough to get through the day.
I mean, I'm hearing rumors they're going to Laguna next year. I don't know how that's going to work.
Laguna's fun.
Noise will be interesting there.
I don't know how. Like, what is everyone going to tow 36 hours to be out there? Like, you guys, what would that be, like a 48-hour drive straight?
Oh, it's not even doable. We just rent a car. We
Yeah.
rode out. We did Laguna with Lucky Dog one time. It was fun. Had a good
Okay.
Yeah,
time
we
That
used their
makes sense.
car.
because that's it's like a 3-day tow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Each
in
way.
like
It would be 6 days of vacation used just for the tow.
Yeah, just for the
Yeah.
tow, and it's not like you're resting and relaxing, sitting there driving.
No,
So
you're
you're
just it would be like
shot.
straight. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, we're in Northeast Pennsylvania. So
Yeah. So that would be a
uh,
trip.
it'd be
like
terrible.
pit race is 5 hours for us. So Laguna's forever.
Yeah.
That's not happening. So we told Adam, I said, just get close. We even consider Mid Ohio close. That's like 13 hours. That's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. From me in Cleveland, it's 38 hours. And that's if you did it straight. So if you just spent 2 days in a car with a buddy driving,
Mhm.
you would show up.
Yeah, fully rested too. Just ready to hit it hard too.
Just 5,000 miles of driving.
To do more driving.
Yeah. Let's do that. Oh, I don't have that symbol on here. Divided by, we'll say I get 14 mpg.
Oh, you don't want to do that. Don't just stop. Don't do.
357
Don't multiply by
gallons.
4. Don't multiply by 4. Don't do it.
I'm gonna do 3. I'm just
You're optimistic. All right.
optimistic. Oh, I hit the wrong button.
And then times 2, right?
It's $1,000 just in gas.
Easy.
Oh,
Easy.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
We're probably like 1,500, probably somewhere around there. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think we get 7, maybe.
Yeah, I
10.
was 14 was very optimistic. I get 14 driving through straight like
Open trailer.
open trailer, but like
Okay.
level ground.
Yeah, it's
And
not level.
I think there's a mountain somewhere in there.
There's a
along the
couple
path.
hills. I don't, a couple hills I've heard about. So yeah, that would be no fun. That's ick. I'll rent the car.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good. All right. So I don't know if we've started already, but I'm ready whenever you are.
all right. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay.